I'm going to bless you with some hard-won and also collective wisdom. It is the wisdom of us all. When it comes to parenting, nobody knows what they are doing. Yes. Your mom didn't know what she was doing. Your dad didn't know what he was doing. Your dad's dad did not know what he was doing. And his dad did not even think very much about it. There is something that happens to the ego when it is faced with this perfect storm, this situational and ancestral brew of profound humility intertwined with profound responsibility. You have been given the keys to a machine you have never operated. Maybe you've watched someone else do it. Perhaps you've read one or two out of hundreds of user's manuals, but you've never actually had this much responsibility paired with this high level of ignorance. The more you consider this fact, the less confident you become. This dissolution of confidence reminds you of other times, perhaps in childhood, when you felt abandoned in your unknowing, alienated by how impossible this series of tasks, and in this case, years of caretaking, seems for you. And so maybe you freeze. You allow the other parent to lead, to take on most of the role because she seems to know what to do. And it's natural, you tell yourself. Or you take flight, disappearing into work, golf, into the internet, into weed or whiskey, feeling helpless and hopeless and repelled by yourself and by the child and by the other parent whose expectations of caretaking threaten to smother you. Perhaps you leave the house altogether and escape the situation, though the responsibility and the shame follows closely. Or maybe you fight, demanding complete obedience and instituting a regime of anxiety and fear because is what was offered to you. And you are ashamed of this, but you can think of no other way to enroll yourself into this institution of fatherhood that was opened for you in the most confusing and disempowering way a door can open. Now, for some, these three fight, flight, or freeze responses have seemed like the only fathering options. For some of us, whose own fathers chose one of these three paths, some of us have had to find other mentors or guides, that chosen family that Jeff mentioned, who could raise us up and teach us how to become who we are. And now, we find ourselves in a time of cultural backlash and backsliding to all those liberation efforts of the late 20th century. On Juneteenth, 2026, we see racism and white supremacy running rampant in the halls of the whitest of houses, upheld by the highest courts and Congress, scaffolded and supported by the class of billionaires, mostly men, who largely appear to be sociopaths or misanthropes at best. And at the same time, we are also living through a rise of toxic masculinity, of Proud Boys-induced neo-patriarchy, reclaiming the minds of young, mostly white young men and recruiting them towards new wine in old wineskins, male dominance over other genders, exploitative dating practices, looks maxing. If you don't know about that, it's an online trend of aggressive obsession with one's appearance to obtain a sense of the perfect male physique, whatever that is, and capitalizing on male insecurity to sell products and win political points and power. And we certainly We certainly hear about and live through the male loneliness epidemic during a time when we carry a tool for connection in our hands close to us, yet use it as an instrument of isolation, watching life pass us by as we sink further into ourselves. And I want to say that even queer communities are not immune to the tropes and the weight of toxic masculinity and the damage that it does to intimacy, to equitable and just living within families and partnerships. Amen? Anyone know what I'm talking about? When toxic masculinity just gets performed, not healed, but performed again. Even in queer relationships and families, I see it every day. And while stories of male supremacy and damaging fathers are as old as the hills, I want you to know that stories of liberation from the chains that bind us within ourselves, well, those are even older. Rabbi Menachem Creditor writes of a Torah portion known as Vayegesh, which translates to "he approached." That's important. Try to remember that this Torah portion translates to "he approached." This centers on one of the most emotionally charged moments in the Torah, Joseph's reunion with his brothers, named Judah and Benjamin. Now, there's a lot to say about everything that goes on between these brothers, and I don't have time to say it. But I'm just going to say that after many years of separation, many layers of hidden pain, brokenness, followed by a facade of composure between these men, a facade of composure. Eventually, Joseph reaches a breaking point, a moment when he can no longer contain his emotions. The text says, Joseph could no longer control himself before all his attendants, and he cried out, "Have everyone leave my presence." This from Genesis 45:1. Left alone with his brothers, Joseph then weeps so loudly that all of Egypt hears his cry. Now, what strikes me about this moment is its raw honesty. It is Joseph who has maintained such composure, such tight control. Eventually, finally, when approached by his brothers in an act of questioning, can we heal? He finally breaks open. His tears, amplified by years of pent-up pain and longing, they pour out in a torrent. It's a really intense moment in the Torah. And what breaks him? It is the tenderness of his brothers. Their vulnerability meets his, and the carefully constructed walls he had built around his heart collapse. Vulnerability is often something we avoid. It feels too raw, too messy, too exposed. But the Torah teaches that in the breaking open, there is possibility. As one of the rabbi's mentors once said to him when he was in a moment of deep despair, he said, "You are not falling apart, you are cracking open." Now both can be true. And in the breaking, in the opening, there is potential for profound connection, for healing, for transformation. This lesson feels deeply relevant today. In this world where pain and disconnection seem to echo louder than ever, and it is so tempting to keep busy, to focus on doing rather than feeling. But as this Joseph story reminds us, the moments when we pause, when we allow ourselves to truly feel, are often the moments that connect us more deeply to ourselves and to each other. Now, since sabbatical time, I want to share that I have been working on inserting a pause into my life, into my response time, so that I may have the freedom to choose where I go next. I offer this insight, this tool to you as you navigate your relationships, as you struggle to become more vulnerable, more open to those around you. Just take a pause. Find your way to that pause, a sacred pause before your response. Inside of that pause is freedom. Viktor Frankl wrote, between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. In the space of Joseph's pause, when he let his feelings flow, he found the freedom to reconcile with his brothers. It wasn't easy. Reconnection rarely ever is. But it was transformative for him, for his family, and for the generations that followed. Now, this moment also reminds us of the power of the community. Joseph's cry was loud enough for all of Egypt to hear, but it was directed towards his brothers, those who had caused him pain, yes, but also the ones who could help him heal. Similarly, in our own lives, we need the presence of others, family, friends, community, certainly our congregation, to hold space for us when we crack open. It is in these moments of shared vulnerability that together we find strength, comfort, and hope. And so we can carry these lessons of Vayagash. He approached. We can carry these lessons into our lives. May we find that courage to pause, to feel, to allow ourselves to crack open. May we surround ourselves with people who can hold us in our vulnerability just as we hold them. And may our cries, like Joseph's, pierce the heavens and return to us as compassion, healing, and connection. Now, just like you will never know bravery without fear, you will also never know your true power and potential until you are able to unleash your vulnerability. Researcher Brené Brown studied shame and connection for many years, and her main takeaways that everyone has shame, everyone's got it, and that the only way out is true connection, which means making yourself vulnerable before another, approaching them, seeking connection. This is the hardest work in the world. It may feel it is a risk that demands too much of us, that no one has equipped us for. Maybe your dad was withdrawn and he withheld too much. Perhaps your dad was not curious enough about you and did not do the only thing his role ever truly needed of him, to behold you. Maybe your dad was not present at all, a ghost of a story, of a myth, of a dream you keep close, leaving you wondering what you needed to do to keep him near to you. Maybe your dad was good enough, and you have the chance to be even better in your way to that which you nurture, either a child or a beloved pet or a church community which runs on big dad energy, or another young person in your life in need of a dad, in need of a mentor, in need of nurturing. Fathering with true presence is, by its very nature, vulnerable. It just is, because nobody knows what they are doing. It is a wild ride of humility when you are hoping to exude strength, of overwhelm when you are aiming for organized, of finding yourself in an urgent care when you were just looking for ease. We need fathers who will offer quiet support and loud support, who will offer us the twinkle in their eye, their earnest energy, and their tears. We need fathers who will do the man's work of washing dishes, of folding the laundry, of kissing boo-boos and practicing empathy, who will ask about their kid's day and stay long enough for the full answer. If you need inspiration of a more vulnerable and steady model of masculinity, well, this has been a week of epic moments from men who demonstrate an emotionally vulnerable strength. I hope, if you have not watched it already, that you will take some time to watch a sports speech for the ages from New York City's Mayor Zohran Mamdani, whose passion for Knicks basketball rivals only his passion for the city he serves and his sense of responsibility to tell a story of dreams long denied, delayed, but never broken to a public in desperate need of emotionally intelligent leaders and inspiring storytellers who are also men. Or on Juneteenth, we saw President Barack Obama, whose unending hope for America reminds us of the way a father brushes us off, straightens our ball cap, and tells us to get back out there on the field and try a little harder and just be our best. Or maybe you've seen on social media that soccer fan dad from Australia who brings his son to a Texas roadhouse in Seattle and shares with us on the internet, Americans, a story of the United States that he sees, a model of hospitality, generosity, abundance, and friendliness. And it feels just like your dad cheering his heart out for you when you feel like you're an international disappointment, an embarrassment. Yet he's still cheering you on, even if you didn't medal, you didn't win anything at all. Your superpower lies in your ability to either be a father or to support a father in reconciling with his downfalls, with the truth of his not knowing what he's doing. And when I say father, I mean that expansively, all who father, whatever gender, and coming towards him, like Joseph's brothers in the Midrash, approaching with open hands, letting this father figure know it is all right to cry. Because when we are releasing our shame, when we are opening our hearts, when we are becoming vulnerable, we become someone to admire, someone to inspire, someone who begins to rise and stretch themselves, rising into dignity. And these performances we see from the highest offices and the highest seats of power, these performances of toxic masculinity, they must dissolve into history, where they flourished behind weapons, behind seats of power. Together, we can hold spaces for men to break open and show their fears, for all who father to show their doubts and all that they are. And may this congregation be a true sanctuary for healthy masculinity, for nurturing fathering, a place where more men find support and safety, and more people who parent find support and safety to become coniferous, to rise like the fir tree, singing psalms about abiding, steadfast, present and evergreen, soft and ethereal, soft enough for us to rest on, dream on, right next to them. Happy Father's Day.